Hi, I'm Isaac Wolf, music producer and audio specialist. I wanted to make this video to kind of help clarify a lot of questions that streamers or content creators might have when it comes to music and what's right for their streams or their content. So, biggest question I get asked all the time is, what do you recommend on time? And personally, when you're looking for some background music or a BGM, my personal recommendation every time is for it to be between about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, roughly. I think that's the sweet spot because with the minute and a half to 2 minutes, it's not overly repetitive and it can sit nice in the background and not really steal focus away from everything. Other thing you need to focus on too when giving out references for the types of songs you want for your background music is that you don't want to have something that's super bombastic or crazy or anything like that with a very heavy melody. You kind of want just rhythms going on in the background and maybe a very simple loopable drum beat. The whole point is that it needs to be loopable and for it to be a form of white noise in the background that just kind of gives a vibe, if anything. Anything more complex than that, I just don't recommend because it will steal focus away from your chatting or what have you. Now, when it comes to an intro screen, a starting soon screen or an ending screen or even a be right back screen, then I recommend you go all out. That's when I would recommend going for the 2 to 3 minute mark on songs and upping the complexity as well as like melodically what you want out of that song. That's where you essentially want an original song that can keep attention, focus, and get people kind of talking. As they wait for either the stream to start, for you to come back, or, as you're closing out the stream. Speaking about complexity, the biggest question I get all the time is what is the difference between different complexities? So right here with me, I have a very simple lo-fi hip-hop song. This is considered simple. The reason why this is considered simple is if we look at this song, a simple refers to the amount of time and effort that is put into the song. I shouldn't really say effort, but more so the time and just how long I'll actually spend on it. I use a sample service, several actually, to find samples online, and I pay for them so that I could, what I'll end up doing is mixing them, changing the tempos, changing the keys, and making sure they're all cohesive. And I do that with a lot of, if I go over to this, I do that with a lot of my plugins here. So as we can see, we have my whole master, which is relatively simple on this specific track, but I do a lot of different stuff depending on the type of track. So, this is an AI-based dynamic EQ, which let me play a little bit of the song. So this will dynamically change the equalizer for the song as it plays. And that's all calculated. And then we have something on, main thing on my master, which that's for leveling and making sure I'm bringing out the most amount of the song. So I essentially do stuff like this for every single track, right? I will EQ, add filter effects, do whatever I can to make the song more cohesive and put it together. Also, arranging the song takes a little bit of time, and finding the right amount of samples probably takes the most amount of time. So with a song like this, it is comprised entirely of samples, everything that I mixed and did put work and effort into to make sure that it sounds this good. So we have, for a simple BGM, the result of this. So it's all these interesting effects to really change the samples and turn them into something else from when I found them. So with this song, it takes me probably 15 to 20 minutes of just making the entire thing, and that's why it's simple. It's very easy. It can get done very quickly. Results do vary since I'm limited to what I can find, but this is what I would consider a very simple song. Now let's move on to a standard song. So this is considered a standard song, and you're noticing that down here what I've done is a bit of manual writing. So I write out these melodies to kind of add more of my own personal flair and my own writing skill to these songs. So this is a standard song, right? So we'll have this pattern. Right, and then we'll start including more melodies in there if I just solo out these. This is a very old song too, so sorry if it's not as good. So mix that with the samples that I'm finding online that I'm still mixing and mastering and everything. So then we have this cohesively. So you're noticing that this is the point where I actually start blending handwritten out music with pre-done samples, right? So with this, I'm actually being a little bit minimalistic on this particular song, and that's because I'm trying to limit the amount of instruments that I'm using, since mixing each instrument does take its own time. But on this song, I'm just using samples and just a piano. I'm also reusing a lot of patterns that you see right here at different points of the song, but to the point of where it still gives a different feel, right? So pattern 3 here feels different than pattern 3 over here. Since now you have that drum beat, you have the background ambiance with the harmonies and melodies, as well as the vinyl piano. So all that considered, this is be considered a standard song in its options. A little bit more time. Probably takes me about an hour or so to make something like this. I don't know. These days I think I'm a lot faster when it comes to this. It really depends on the genre and what's asked of me and the references that I'm given, so time always varies per each track. Next, let's move on to a complex song. So here we have a complex song. So we're noticing from the standard song and jumping over to the complex song that we're moving away from using or relying too much on samples, and we're handwriting out the majority of the song. And this song in particular actually has a lot of instruments, and there's a lot going on for it, so it's also a lot more mixing. So with that, still including certain samples such as, which are more background elements, even if we go here. And a lot of texture work is what I like to use samples for on complex songs like this. If need be, sometimes I don't even use samples at all on complex songs, but you're noticing it's a lot more writing, right? So we have... And to clear up any confusion, one pattern is not one instrument. Because I'm terrible at being organized, oftentimes it's multiple instruments. So if we look at this, we have a guitar. I believe this is a bell, and then a koto or shamisen. So all this takes a lot more work, takes a lot longer. There's a lot more mixing that goes into it, and obviously I'm coming up with the melodies on the spot and trying to find out what really works based on the references that I was given. So this would be considered a complex song. something that some people definitely want if they want that richness and vibrancy from their songs. Mind you, when I mix and master, I make sure the quality of all work is top notch and as best as possible. So audio quality will never go down. It's really complexity in melodies, how many instruments are there, and what I'm doing with it. And I have a lot more control when we go through the discussion phase of going back and forth on drafts as to what we can change. On simple songs, it's much more difficult to do that, since what it comes down to, oh, well, I didn't really like this melody that much. I'm like, well, that was a sample since you paid for simple. So unfortunately, I'll either have to scrap the sample or figure out something else. And it's not uncommon for me to sometimes just hand write out certain things, especially in piano songs, on simple piano songs. Typically, I do hand write out a lot of melodies just because it's easier for me. And really what it is like the amount of time that I have to put into the song, right? And the amount of depth and complexity that goes into it. So next, let's go to a banger quality song. All right, so here we have a banger complexity song, and it probably looks like a bunch of chicken scratch because it kind of is, but as you can tell, there's a lot going on here. And even if I try to space this out a bit better, we have a lot more automations, more complex stuff going on. So specifically, this song is Akami's or Yoklesh's Be Right Back song called The Hunt. And this was a very special project, but I would consider this is the one that really defined banger quality. And that's the amount of time and effort. This one took a couple days to really make right, and the amount of mixing and effort that went into this song was a ton. Now, it is metal, which I'm more comfortable with. In fact, metal, it's easier for me to make more banger quality songs. Some things I might be taking out in the future would be a jazz complexity of banger. I can't do banger jazz just because I'm not too comfortable in jazz. In fact, the most expensive genres that you might see on the list may be barred from having banger complexity only because of my comfort level of what I feel like I can deliver. So for a song like this, right, we have a bunch going on. So you can tell here we have taikos, all individually mixed in order to have the best sound quality possible. We even have more taikos. So we have a separate pattern just for the sticks. Down here we might have some koto, which is mimicking the guitar. And the guitar, the very special thing about this guitar is, if I lower this down, so this is all the notes that are being played, right? However, we're getting into things now, a lot more complex things, such as pitch bends, and making sure that those pitch bends are done properly. Pair those together. Then we have bass. So that's an actual bass plugin that I have, and I'm really cracking out like my most expensive instruments, like virtual instruments, and plugins that I have to go above and beyond, and they're very complex things that takes a lot of time. We're also pairing the bass with, I believe, an 808. No, actually no, with a overly tuned marimba for texture work. So then we start getting into special key switches to ensure the proper sound. There are 3 guitars in this song. Actually, I think there might be 4 in total. And that's just to get the sound as perfectly as possible. So as you can see, I'm still employing certain samples, like for hi-hats and drums. But that was based on the type of song here. But most of the time, I don't really rely on any samples whatsoever. The song stands on its own, regardless. So pairing that with the taiko drums and these samples, the guitar gets a lot more complex too. And then when we get into the bass, I'm actually using slap bass for this one too. So what you're noticing here too is that both the bass and the guitar aren't mimicking each other, but they're complementing each other. Which takes way more time as opposed to a standard or complex metal song. At least I'm using metal in this example, where I would be mimicking those parts and reusing a lot of those parts as much as possible, mostly to save me on some time. However, it's really all about the composition of the song, and repetitiveness is absolutely a quality that needs to be utilized properly in order for the song to sound good, right? But, I'm doing everything that I can to make the song stand out as much as possible, to the point of where we even have a bass solo out there. And since the making of this song too, I've actually gotten even more plugins to and virtual instruments to make this quality of music stand out more and sound even better. So, and that's not the case for just metal, but it translates and trickles down to all other aspects of my songs. And to wrap things up here, so this would be a banger quality song. Some people might wonder, well, why is the simple songs, why are those so expensive, or why do they cost the amount that they cost? And that is the amount of time that I spend working on these songs, which I did state earlier on the simple songs can take me about 10 minutes. However, it's still, I need to take into account all of the cost for all of the plugins, instruments, and everything that I use, as well as my sample services. The total cost of everything is quite high, but that's to ensure the best quality imaginable, hence why I charge what I charge. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to leave a comment or message me on Twitter. Thank you so much for your time.